Hello and welcome to the second episode of our Business and Sport the video podcast. And this time round, we've moved base. We've moved base from Paris to London, joined by two distinguished guests. One of them you've now seen multiple times on this platform, Sporting Society colleague, academic colleague who's done multiple conferences with me. We've collaborated together, will collaborate multiple times going forward in the future. And Vijay Pereira. So I'm not introducing you because you're now in-house. I mean, you're a part of the journey yourself. And joining us today is Professor Benjamin Laker of the Reading Henley Business School. I mean, he's part of the whole business and sport framework in London. And today, where they are, the Games Village, 10 years back in London during the 2012 Games. And why are we there? 10 years down the line, we want to understand the real legacy of London 2012. While it was all great, seeing that opening ceremony, I was there in Stratford, David Beckham and the Queen, and all of that was great. The whole redevelopment of the East End, how is it looking 10 years down the line? What's the ethnographers saying? Professor Benjamin Laker first. 10 years down the line, if I were to ask you, how do you look at the London Games? Was it a jackpot? Was it a burden?
Well, for society, it certainly was a high point with regard to culture and intertwining culture with a sporting legacy. And I'm sure you could speak to young people up and down the country who were certainly inspired by what they saw, and perhaps they took up particularly the sport, perhaps they took on certain endeavours in their life. And at a grassroots level, I believe that there has been significant uptake in sports as a result of that. But of course, an Olympic Games is typically much wider in terms of the impact that it will have. And if you look at the commerciality, as we've mentioned, the entire regeneration of this area of London, the East End, specifically Stratford, which was ripe for regeneration for many, many years, that has been huge. We are in one of the big hotels in Stratford as we currently sit right now. All around us were the Olympic villages that were attended and occupied by athletes and colleagues. It's all now commercial. We sat next to one of the largest shopping centres in Europe, very commercial. So you could argue cynically, the legacy of the Games is one which is completely commercial. And the epitome of that, if you look at now what has happened to the Olympic Stadium, which you may recall was specifically designed as an athletics stadium, now is the home of West Ham United Football Club, certainly not athletics. And if you spend time around that Olympic Stadium, you will be inundated with football, with soccer, which of all of the sports in the world is one of the most commercial. You're going to struggle to recall times where that was used purely as an athletics event. And so you will see their cynics and criticism in high profile outlets such as The Guardian, where they will say it has been too commercialized and the original spirit of the Games has therefore been lost in the 10 years since the Games.
So Vijay, if I take it from there, I mean, is this whole spirit argument overdone? Because, yes, you've also got to make commercial value. I mean, otherwise, ultimately, if you keep giving the spirit argument, things won't work. If you really take Rio, and if you compare it with London, you will see the legacy is also positive for London. What is your take on this? Because when I was there in 2011, for example, we remember the riots. We remember the riots in and around the same areas. We've seen how East End completely transformed itself. So how do you look at it, Vijay? Are we being too cynical, or is the popular media, the examples that were just given by Professor Laker, are they being too cynical about the legacy of London? Vijay Pereira.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. I mean, if you look at the very basis of why cities bid for the Olympics, something that we briefly discussed in our last episode, it's for many reasons. One of them, of course, is economic upliftment, the whole spirit of sport, business, local people getting employment that prolongs into permanent employment, and so on and so forth. So I think if you look at it 10 years down the line, and if you ask cynical, yes, there will be some cynicism. But if we have to weigh up what has happened in terms of it being good and bad, I think the good far outweighs the bad. There will always be place for cynicism. There will always be place for criticism. Let me also then bring in a big talk about it in the media. More recently, the Guardian article, 2022, May, that talked about how housing cannot be affordable for people or common people who are without housing, and that figure is going up. But there again, you can't blame only the legacy, but there are several factors, economic, political factors that come into play. So very quickly answering your question on cynicism, yes, I think there is always place for cynicism, but if you wait and look at the 10 years of legacy, there has been more good than bad coming out of it.
You know, Professor Lekha, I was there at Hyde Park when Mo Farah won that race. I could see white-collar Brits with, the blacks and men of color celebrating. For me, it was a success of multiculturalism. One could see what was going on with Jess Ennis. So when 10 years down the line, what we are talking, is Olympics a soft target? I mean, is Olympics this target that, okay, let's blame the Olympics because it's this big budget commercial extravaganza, the caravan moves in and out. Is Olympics a soft target?
I think it would depend on who you ask, but for many people now, they will reminisce that the Jess Ennis race where she won the multiple gold medals, or now the Servo Farah, those times were the peak of culturalism within the UK, because of course, if you look at then what happened 4 years later with the departure from the European Union, that would then be seen as the decline of multiculturalism with the rise of nationalism, of which the Olympics typically is not. Typically, you're looking at an internationalisation and a coming together of people from around the world. So maybe at the time, the UK didn't know how good it had itself, and at that time they thought it was going to be the platform to go on and do greater things, and actually that was the peak. And the UK as a result will really struggle to get back to a point where they are the very centre of the world, examples of globalisation and the epitome of how cultural differences can come together and be all things to all people, and be a very inclusive and diverse space, of which the UK arguably now is less than it was 10 years ago.